You may be seated for the reading of the gospel. It comes from Mark, the 10th chapter. And this is the third time that Jesus predicts that he is going to Jerusalem and die, but also the third time that he says, now listen, if you really want to be great, serve. So there's got to be something important in that, right? So here's the story from Mark chapter 10. At length, they made their way toward Jerusalem. Jesus was walking ahead of them as they neared the city. Wonder and amazement filled them, but soon those who were following began to tremble. And Jesus, taking the 12 aside, said, "Look, we are going up to Jerusalem, and there the Son of Man is going to be delivered to the chief priests and to the scribes. They shall seek his death and deliver him to the outsiders to carry out that sentence. Then people will mock him, spit on him, whip him, and kill him. But on the third day, he will rise." 2 of the 12, the sons of Zebedee, as they were known, approached Jesus and pulled him aside. And James and John said, "Teacher, will you do something for us if we ask it of you?" And Jesus said, "What is it that you want?" And they asked, "Well, Master, grant that we might sit on either side of you, one at your right hand and one at your left, when you come into the glory of your kingdom." And Jesus said, "You don't know what it is that you are asking. Can you drink from the cup I have to drink, or be ritually washed in baptism with the baptism that awaits me?" And James and John say, "We can." Jesus says, "You will indeed drink from the cup I drink from, and be baptized with the baptism that awaits me. But to sit at my right or my left hand is an honor I cannot grant. That will be given to those for whom it has been prepared." When the other 10 heard about this request, they were angry with James and John, but Jesus stopped them and said, "You know that among the nations of the world, the great ones lord it over the little people and act like tyrants. But that's not the way it will be among you. Whoever would be great among you must serve and minister. Whoever wants to be great among you must be slave of all. Even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to be a servant, to offer his life as a ransom for others." By that time, they had reached Jericho. As they passed through the town, a crowd of people followed along. They came to a blind beggar, Bartimaeus, the son of Timaeus, who sat beside the main road. When he was told that Jesus of Nazareth was passing in that throng, he called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Son of David, take pity on me, help me." Disgusted by the blind man's public display, others in the crowd tried to silence him until the master passed, but some in the crowd would say, "Shh, be quiet." Bartimaeus still louder, "Jesus, Son of David, have pity on me." And Jesus stopped where he stood. The crowd stopped with him. He told those near the front of the crowd to call the blind man forward. He said, "Good news, Jesus has heard you. Listen, he calls for you. Get up, go to him." And Bartimaeus cast aside his beggar's robe. He stepped forward, feeling his way towards Jesus. And Jesus said, "What do you want from me?" And Jesus said, "Your faith has made you whole." Or he said, "I want to see." And Jesus said, "Your faith has made you whole. Go in peace." And in that moment, Bartimaeus could see again. And from that time on, he followed Jesus. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So when something happens 3 times, it's usually time to pay attention. And so 3 times, back to back to back, there are these stories where Jesus says, if you really want to be great, then you have to serve. If you really want to be great, you have to be servant first. If you're trying to grasp for money, for power, for whatever it is, that's not the way to greatness. If you really want to be great, you have to serve. And you'd think that after a while, these disciples have been following Jesus, they would get it, but they don't. Right? They don't. Every time that they have an opportunity to show that maybe they've gotten it, they just don't. They come to Jesus the very first time, right? And they're having this quarrel about who's the greatest, right? Who's the one who's going to get power when Jesus finally gets to Jerusalem and is this king riding in on a white horse, and they're vying to see, well, who's going to get to be the one in power once he takes over and kicks out the Romans, and Israel really gets to be great again. And Jesus says, no, stop it. What are you even arguing about? That's not what following me is about. If you really want to be one who works for the kingdom of God, then serve. Take care of others before you think of yourself. And then again, it happens, and here a third time it happens, and it just seems like it's really hard for us to get past that power, that struggle for power. It's really hard for us to think that God would really ask us to serve others first. And it really goes back to, what some call original sin or sin of origin, or what Martin Luther calls incurvatus in se. Says that really the root of sin is that we're stuck looking at ourselves. That's really what is sin, is that we have this constant propensity to just look at ourselves, look after ourselves, and we are stuck here looking after me and my own, and really we don't get an opportunity to look up and to see others with love, and to be freed from sin. The work that Jesus comes to do is to take our heads from just staring at ourselves and to lift it up, so that we can see others with love, right? So every time these disciples are looking at what's happening, they're like, wow, he's gathering momentum. His campaign is growing great. People are donating. It really looks like he's going to become president. And then every time he says, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to serve people. I'm trying to open up your eyes to see that this isn't about for grasping for money and power and strength, but rather, if you want to participate in making God's kingdom a reality, a place where there's peace and love and justice for every person, then stop grasping for power. Serve people. That's what I'm trying to do here. I'm not trying to blaze this campaign trail. I know what's going to happen to me, Jesus says. I know that this message of actually caring for others is a dangerous message. That asking people to share what they have with others isn't going to sit well. And asking people to give up their own power for the sake of others is something that's going to land me on the cross. But that's still the message I'm going to preach. I'm going to preach this message that if you want to really be great in the world, then you have to be willing to sacrifice yourself. So I'm going to show you how that's done. I'm going to show you how that's done. And I'm going to keep putting others first and foremost. And so Jesus keeps blazing that trail, and the disciples keep missing it, right? They keep missing it until the end. Eventually, some of them catch on, and they look back on their lives, and they look back, and wow, he really did give it all up for the sake of everybody. They thought maybe it was a lie. They thought maybe it was just part of his campaign speech, right? That along the way, he was just trying to get more people on board. So he said, no, really, if you want greatness, serve first. Give me some of your money, and I'll continue to help others. And like so many other politicians, that was just going to be a lie. And really, they did want the power and the money for themselves. And so maybe they were already prepared for that to just not be real. They thought, no, he can't really mean that. He can't really mean that he's going to become a servant once he gets all of this power. Surely he's going to actually take the power, take the reins, and once he gets that power, I want to be right next to him. But no, Jesus follows through. And he says, really and truly, if you want power, you have to be servant first and foremost. You have to be willing of giving yourself up for the sake of others. And finally, it happens. And there's this encounter that happens right after Jesus dies, and the disciples I don't know, they don't know what to do. They don't know how to move forward. And Peter has denied Jesus 3 times because he was confused, didn't quite know what was going on. And they meet together on a beach later. The disciples are out fishing, and Jesus helps them out, and they come onto the shore, and Jesus cooks them breakfast, still serving, right? Even after he dies and comes back, serves them, makes them breakfast. Then Peter comes forward and says, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that I really didn't believe enough. And I'm so sorry. And Jesus says a really difficult question. Well, do you love me? And Peter says, well, yeah, I love you. And then, Jesus says, then feed my sheep, serve. And then, Peter denied him 3 times. So Jesus asks him 3 times, do you love me? And that second time, Peter says, yes, I love you. And Jesus says, well, then take care of my sheep. Serve. And then a 3rd time, Jesus asked him, do you love me? And that must have really hurt. That must have really hurt Peter, because he knew that he had denied him 3 times. He knew that Jesus had told him 3 times in previous life, hello, serve. And now here he is saying, now do you love me? A 3rd time. And he says, well, of course, I love you. And he says the same thing. Feed my sheep. Feed my sheep. If you really want to be great, if you really want to love me, if you really want to be a part of God's kingdom, take care of the people around you. Take care of the most vulnerable. Take care of those who are hungry, those who don't have a place to look for home, for shelter, for family. Open up yourself for the sake of others. Share what you have with the world. Clean somebody's house when they're in most need, right? Jesus shows up in many ways when we serve others. And so my prayer for you is that you might look within yourself and find a way to be truly great. Find a way to be truly great, to be a participant in God's kingdom, to look around and find ways that you can serve. Be a servant. Do you want to love Jesus? Then take care of his sheep. Amen.